Welcome to Dave and Dharm Demystify, a FinTech Futures podcast, helping make sense of the world of FinTech and digital finance. Please sit back and listen as the two Ds take a subject and discuss it to make it clearer and easier to understand.
Demystify.
Welcome to today's episode. And today we have somebody coming back onto the podcast a year after we did the first podcast. So there's two reasons. One is we absolutely love to keep track of some of the people that we've talked to and understand their success. The other reason is Dharmesh couldn't join us last time, so he was keen to kind of meet you. So welcome back, Ziad, from Huspy. For Dharmesh's sake, do you want to give a brief introduction to yourself and also Huspy? And then let's get into it.
Thank you very much for having me, Dave and Dharmesh. I enjoyed our last podcast a lot, and I'm sure we will have a great one as well today. So Dharmesh, to give you a very quick overview of Huspy. Huspy is a prompt technology company based out of the UAE, Dubai to be specific. We just turned 5 years old last month, and we're one of the fastest growing proptechs globally. Our mission as an organization is very straightforward. Our objective is to serve the people that serve the home buyer and the home seller, which means that our first line of customers are not the home buyers and sellers per se, but the people that serve them, both on the mortgage side as well as on the real estate side. So on the mortgage side, our client are the mortgage brokers that are helping people, home buyers, obtain the best mortgages from the banks. And on the real estate side, our first line of customer are the real estate agents or the brokers that are assisting home buyers and sellers in their buying and selling journey. Over the last 5 years, we have grown a lot as an organization, whereby we had started only as a digitized mortgage broker and moved on to cover the entire process of home buying, from the search phase all the way to you signing your mortgage and obtaining your house effectively. We are currently present in 3 countries. Last time we had spoken, we were only present in the UAE and Spain. As of last month, we are in the process of launching our business in Saudi Arabia, starting with the capital in Riyadh. And we went from being operational in 3 cities to now being operational in 9 cities. So last time we spoke, we only sold houses in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Madrid, whereas today we sell houses in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, Madrid, Valencia, Alicante, Costa Blanca, Ibiza, and Malaga. So we are in very heavy expansion mode while also focusing on increasing our market share and penetration within our existing markets.
Just a question that just comes straight out because, why Spain?
Yeah, you can imagine how many times we've answered.
Yes.
Yeah. In addition to the fact that Spain is an amazing country, effectively, when we decided to expand beyond the UAE, which was around the first quarter of 2022, we wanted to avoid what most companies in our region do. So naturally, the natural progression in the region is to start a company in the UAE, which is, as we know, a very attractive market for global talent. It's very easy to attract some of the best talent in the world from some of the best tech companies in the world to move there, considering the quality of life, the tax situation, and the fact that over especially the last 5 years, the UAE has truly positioned itself as a center of the business world, whether it's on finance, technology, and so on. So the natural progression would usually mean we launched the UAE, we did a good job. We now go next door, which is Saudi Arabia, because it's a market that's 3 to 4 times bigger in size of population. When we decided to do our international expansion, of course, we naturally assessed our expansion to the Saudi market as a first step. And it became very obvious to us after spending some time in Saudi on the ground, during what we call the discovery phase of our expansion, that the market was still premature for our offering. We had a very high confidence that the day will come when the market will be ready for Huspy's offering. And we believe that time is today, which is why we decided to launch Saudi Arabia today. So we went back effectively to the drawing board and said, look, we seem to have a very strong value proposition and we have a very good perspective on how to disrupt the real estate transaction, whether it's on the home buying and selling or on the mortgage side of it. We have the right resources, we have the right investors, and last but not least, we have the right team. So why would we restrict ourselves geographically to what's close to us, let's say, which is Saudi Arabia, which is an hour flight from the UAE? So effectively, we looked at the whole world that started cutting down. We built a very quantitative and qualitative driven framework to assess different markets. And Spain really kind of ticked all the boxes heavily on what is considered a very attractive market for us. To walk you very quickly through the framework, effectively what we're looking, of course, is for a large addressable market on real estate and mortgages, a good take rate on both businesses, very strong fragmentation with the current players in the market. So in Spain, you're talking no single real estate agency or mortgage broker has more than 1-2% market share. And the same on the bank side, not too much concentration on the mortgage side on the banks, and overall a broken experience. And Spain hit those marks very strongly off the start. And now looking back at that decision 4 years in, we believe, and our investors believe, that it was the best potential market we could have launched. If you look at the Spanish real estate sector over the last 5 years, it's witnessed incredible growth across all metrics: pricing, demand, supply, and so on. And Spain actually is the market in Europe that's performing the best from an economic point of view over the last few years when it comes to GDP growth and real estate industry performance.
Question for you, because I've been helping a sort of a proptech business, and one thing that I've realized is just the differences between different geographies in terms of how basically houses are bought and sold. You kind of assume that there would be one straight process wherever you go, but it's, I'm dealing with US businesses at the moment, and I'm like, they're talking gibberish to me as far as I can make. And even like the business is Austrian, and they were saying to me, like, if you look at kind of the real estate platforms in Austria, they don't have the actual addresses of the houses on them because that's just not the way the Austrians work. So how have you kind of dealt with the differences? And I guess what's the playbook that you've kind of created? Because as you expand into other markets, you're going to have to deal with all these differences, aren't you?
Very valid question, Dave. Let me tell you that I agree with you to a certain extent, and then I disagree with you to another extent, and explain my and Huspy's point of view on this matter, because obviously it's something that's always on the table, right? At the core, the real estate transaction is extremely similar across markets, If you don't get into the nitty-gritty details, you have a real estate agent that is doing the vast majority of the work, or a mortgage broker that's doing vast majority of the work. So on the real estate agent side, you have an individual who's responsible to convince a seller to allow them to commercialize their property in exclusivity or not, depending on the seller and the agent himself. That property then goes online on a portal, generates buyer leads, and then there's a hand-holding process that happens between the agent and the home buyer and the home seller to hopefully get to a transaction. This is the case across the vast majority of markets internationally. And us as an organization, what differentiates us versus other players, more traditional players in this sector, is that our job is to make the life of a real estate agent and a mortgage broker better. Why? Because we believe that the people that do the majority of the work, first of all, deserve to have the best tools at hand to be able to execute their job at the highest level. And two, they deserve the majority of the reward, right? How can I, sitting behind an office most days, not talking to buyers, not talking to sellers, not knocking on doors, not doing cold calling to source properties, say that the home buyer and the home seller are my clients? I speak to tens and hundreds and thousands of agents, yet I only speak to 1 or 2 or 3 handfuls of home buyers and home sellers. So the idea of Huspy is to enable agents to give the best quality service to their customers, and in return, receive a very fair, let's say, value from this effort that they put in. This applies across all markets. Unfortunately, in the Middle East and in Europe, real estate agents and mortgage brokers, first of all, are not provided the best tools and infrastructure to go about their job. And second of all, which is something, of course, very important, because we're not a charity here. At the end of the day, we're all here to make money, is that they're not receiving enough reward for the money, for the effort that they're putting in. To give you just very high-level numbers, in Spain, about 75% of real estate agents are what we call autonomous, meaning they're non-salaried, their pay is purely based on commissions. And within this population of 75 to 80% of freelance agents that we have in Spain, the commission that the real estate agent makes out of the commission generated by the transaction varies between 10 to 30%. So effectively, you're talking about an individual who's doing the vast majority of the work and getting a very small portion of the gains, right? When we're talking about 10, 15, 20, or 30%, with some agencies going up to 40 and above only when you hit very high slabs of commission. Whereas at Huspy, what do? We provide agents with the best infrastructure to go about their day-to-day, best access to an amazing office to work from, a modern, attractive, sexy brand that truly speaks to the home buyers and home sellers of 2025, not 1998. We've built an incredible real estate agent app that's dedicated to our real estate agents, which effectively puts their entire office, all the tools they use in one platform that's accessible from their phone or from their laptop. And last but not least, we give them very generous commissions. So at Huspy in Spain and the rest of Europe, real estate agents make 60% of the commission. Why? Because they do the majority of the work, and we believe that the people who do the majority of the work deserve the majority of the reward. Now, when you get into the nitty-gritty and the legalities of this industry, it's absolutely correct. Things change from country to country. I'll tell you even more. Things change from city to city, province to province, and community to community in Spain. And us as an organization, we pride ourselves very much by knowing what we know well, but more importantly, by knowing what we don't know. And when you have this mix of young, hungry, ambitious, hardworking people that do not take no for an answer, you add that with strong resources from a financial point of view. And obviously here I have to thank our investors that believed in us from day zero and that continue believing in us. And you add to this equation the people that serve the home buyer and the home seller, who are the real estate agent and the mortgage broker, you end up with a very strong trilogy, let's call it, for the lack of a better word, that wins every market that they play, So long story short, the transaction and the ecosystem, the way the sector operates, is very similar across markets. When you get into the nitty-gritty, there's a lot of localization and adaptation that is required, that we pride ourselves very much from being able to do well because we're flexible enough. I know that selling €1 million property in Madrid is not the same as selling a €250,000 property in Alicante, and it's not the same as selling a €5 million villa in Ibiza. So our flexibility allows us to very much localize our offering and our approach to specific markets, depending on what the market requires.
So, and just to kind of, so people understand, in terms of the kind of customer experience, you do listings as well. So it's kind of interesting because then there's I guess, globally a number of property platforms out there which have just focused on listings, less the sort of experience for the agents and the brokers. And that's really what you're kind of going after, isn't it?
Absolutely. Although we list our own properties or our own, let's say, portfolio on our own platforms, the reality is we rely on the main portals in every country in which we operate to generate our leads. So to be very clear, we are not a classified business. We are not a portal business. We are not here to compete in Spain versus the likes of Idealista and Fotocasa, or in the UAE with the likes of Property Finders and Bayut. We are actually customers, part of the ecosystem of these portals. The way we operate as a business is that we provide the people that serve the home buyer and the home sellers with the best infrastructure, the best technology, and the best financial conditions to serve the home buyer and the home seller. And our thesis in this is that if you provide the people that serve the home buyer and the home sellers with the best possible experience, the best training, the best technology, and the best commission, these individuals are going to put significantly more effort in servicing their clients, which will create a much better experience overall and generate value for the home buyer and the home seller, the people serving them, who are the mortgage broker and the real estate agent, and us as an organization which are providing these services to these customers.
Fantastic. So in terms of some news that you had recently, you've just got a big finance round. Was that to help you fund expansion into Saudi Arabia? Was there other things going on that you needed the money for?
So as you mentioned correctly, this past summer, a few months ago, we announced our Series B, which was led by Balderton Capital, of about $59 million. First, I really want to thank our investors in this round. Balderton Capital had led a bridge round that we had also last year. So it's an amazing signal to us as a company, to our existing investors, to our customers, and to the overall market of the strong belief that Huspy has the right recipe and operating model and team and resources to disrupt this archaic sector that had not been disrupted in a very long time. The reality is, as a company, we proved over the last 12 months that we can grow consistently while having very solid financials and not burning cash. Having said this, Huspy is very well known to be an extremely ambitious organization where rational growth does not fit our ambitions. What we're looking for is consistent exponential growth. Consistent exponential growth does not come easy. Consistent exponential growth comes with exceptional people putting an exceptional level of effort to be able to come up with this exceptional outcome that we're looking for. And obviously, when you want to grow exponentially, you need to have access to strong financials. So our Series B was mainly geared towards two elements. One, doubling down and accelerating our expansion, whereby up until August 2024, we were only selling houses in 3 cities, versus today, 24 months later, we're selling houses in 9 or 10 cities. The idea next year is to at least double the number of cities in which we're selling properties in Spain, going from 6, 7 to around 15, launch 1 or 2 additional European countries, and double down very heavily on our existing businesses in the UAE and Spain. And as I mentioned earlier during the conversation, launching the business in Saudi Arabia, starting with Riyadh. And the second kind of use of these funds is going to be to make sure we are providing the best technology on a global level to both our real estate agents and our mortgage brokers. And last but not least, start building beyond that. We have a very strong thesis and a very clear roadmap about what we want to build post this part of the transaction. We believe there's great value in delivering this and truly building a category-defining business. Unfortunately, I cannot get into too much detail on what's this kind of third point that I just discussed, but hopefully on our next podcast, maybe in 12 months from now, we'll be able to get into that.
I mean, I'm definitely very intrigued. And as Dave knows, I did a proptech back in 2019. And
when it wasn't sexy yet, necessarily.
when it wasn't sexy. And
I think Dharm invented the word proptech because he was like, oh, we're in fintech. No one's got proptech. So
sorry to interrupt you, Dharm, but I always remember this phrase from Ziad, our CEO, when he had started raising funds for Huspy before the business even truly existed. Whenever we used to mention the word proptech or mortgages or home sales, VCs used to be significantly turned off. Whereas we've seen over the last 5 years a very severe change in position on this, which is obviously amazing for us, but also amazing for the entire ecosystem of proptech, because real estate remains the largest asset class globally and remains the asset class that's least penetrated / disrupted by technology. But sorry, back to your question, Dor.
No, at one point we were talking about prop fintechs, because you're in that kind of crosshair of financial services and obviously of the property side of things. But I guess, just from my experience, which wasn't fantastic, right? I didn't achieve my goals on this final startup that my wife allowed me to do. But one of the challenges that we faced, aside from the fact that, I moved from 30 years in banking to a totally different industry to see if we could disrupt it, this archaic landscape in the UK. There's so many actors in the life cycle of buying and selling a home, and each have very strong voices, like the conveyancers or solicitors, the banks themselves, the lenders, the estate agents, and then you've got the government portals themselves, for searches and deeds and stuff like that. And it was just, oh my God, we just want to share some data between all of you to make your lives easier, let alone, for the poor old home buyer that have to navigate all this stuff. So what's the secret sauce in making this happen? Clearly, you've been successful. I know lots of things I did wrong, but what would have been the right thing to have done to make it successful?
I'll break this down in a few pieces because it's a very valid question. And what you're saying actually is something that we've seen since we started Huspy, right? There's two main issues in this industry. First of all, that the existing players in the market are making very, very large amounts of money and have been making this for very, very many decades. So they have a very strong grip over the industry.
Yeah.
And typically the participants in this industry, if you take out the home buyers and the home sellers, are quite rigid about changing the way they do things. If you remove the fact that today the property search starts on a portal, if you think about how our grandparents bought houses, the process has not changed too much whatsoever. Instead of that, they used to open a newspaper or walk to an agency, and then the entire process is still extremely similar to the way traditional real estate agencies operate. The same exact thing applies to the mortgage side of the transaction with the banks servicing customers. So I think the first issue that most proptechs around the world face is who should they be building for? Should they be building for the banks? Should they be building for the home buyer and the home seller? Should they be building for the real estate agent? Or should they be building for the mortgage brokers? I think one of the main reasons that led to the success we lived over the last 5 years is that from the first day, we decided that we're going to be extremely focused on building for the people that serve the home buyer and the home seller, not the home buyer and the home seller. Why? Because of the point I mentioned at the beginning. Today, if I walk into the office of a CEO of any real estate agency in Europe or the Middle East, and I ask them who their customers are, their answer is always going to be, my customer in this district is the home buyer that comes from this nationality with this much buying power. And that this, but we don't speak to the home buyer and the home seller. It's the people that serve the home buyer and the home seller that speak to them. So a lot of people try to build products for the home buyer and the home seller, and distribution becomes extremely complex on that. Whether you're going to rely on digital channel or sales team or so on, it's extremely difficult to reach that end consumer in a scalable, profitable, exponential growth way. So I'd say the first and most important factor that led to our success is that we were very focused from the very beginning on knowing who our customers are and doing everything that we can to make their lives better, by giving them technology, by giving them training, by giving them access to banks, by giving them access to supply, and by giving them access to very generous commission.
Yeah, I wish I'd spoken to you 7 years ago.
It didn't come easy.
Yeah, the other thing, Dharm, is you should have probably started in Dubai as well. So, I am interested. I know you don't want to talk about it, but I mean, one of the things that, having spent time in Dubai, you realize there's a real focus on AI. Now, if I was building a business like yours, I would assume that AI would kind of be front and center of the way you do things and then the overall experience. I just wondered if you could talk about whether that's true or not, or whether you're able to talk about whether that's true or not. Because Dharmesh and I are seeing AI fundamentally changing the finance industry. I don't think the prop tech industry or the property industry is really kind of real estate industry really understood what the impact of AI is. But I'm guessing you would have a strong opinion on that.
Yeah, the biggest subject of the day, right? So,
well, look, we did manage to get 25 minutes in before we asked.
We did. So let me take a step back to take a wider lens on how we see proptech as a whole, and then try to focus my conversation on the role that AI is going to play in this industry, at least in the way we see it as an organization. There's two main schools of thought when you're trying to address the proptech conversation on the home transaction. There's a school of thought that says human beings today are ready to buy a house without human intervention. So the same way, I'm sure the three of us go and order groceries online, TVs online, maybe our clothing, maybe our furniture, all the way up to a car online. There is a school of thought that says human beings today, if you build the right journey with the intervention of the right AI agents or chatbots across the journey, you can sell a property without the intervention of a human being. That is not our school of thought at Huspy. Why? Because this is by far, for the vast majority of people around the world, the most complex, emotional, and most importantly, largest transaction of their life. It's a very important thing as a human being to be able to buy your house. And as time goes by, it's just becoming more and more difficult from an accessibility point of view. Therefore, we believe that the presence of a human expert, and I say expert between brackets because we all know that, unfortunately, you go from the terrible real estate agent to the superstar real estate agent, and the service level that you receive depends on the offering that you get from this individual, is very important. We believe that human beings today are not ready to buy a house without being accompanied by a human being. Therefore, we do not believe that today AI is going to disrupt the role of a real estate agent and a mortgage broker, which is why we are doing everything that we can to use artificial intelligence to enable our real estate agent and mortgage brokers rather than disrupt them. So how can we use artificial intelligence to make their jobs easier, better, to make sure that the quality of service is continuously improving using artificial intelligence, whether that's making them more efficient in the way they do things, rather than spending 5 and 10 minutes drafting something as simple as a caption for a property that they just sourced. They'll have the option to press a button and that caption gets generated along. So 2 things. How can we use artificial intelligence to make sure that our first line of customer, the home real estate agent and the mortgage broker, are doing their job in the best way possible? And 2, how can we use artificial intelligence internally as a team to make ourselves more efficient, deliver better quality service to our customers?
Can I just ask on this, because we literally had a conversation just recently with kind of people that provide software to banks. And, in the old scenario, banks basically hived off the load of data, analyzed it offline, and then worked out, what they were going to promote. Now, if I look at the portals, just as a home buyer perspective, right? When I look at the existing portals that have all the market share, etc., like in the UK, Zoopla and Rightmove, right? Based on old relational database technology, which literally limits my search to, about half a dozen fields. And really what I want to say is look, I want a house that is close to the countryside, but within half an hour of London. I also want it to kind of look a little bit Georgian, but be modern on the inside. I want to have that conversation, right?
Yeah, instead of having filters, what you want is a search bar that understands human language.
Correct.
We have just deployed this. We have literally a few months ago deployed exactly what you just described, exactly without any difference to our agents in the UAE. So today, a Huspy agent in the UAE can open their app and literally type, I have a client called Dharm looking for a property in this neighborhood of Dubai. It needs to be with these characteristics. I want it to be 10 minutes walk from the beach. I need to have the vet for my dog, specialized at dogs, a maximum of 15-minute drive, and a British school that's within a 1 kilometer radius of my house. This is an extremely good example of how we want to use artificial intelligence, not to disrupt our agents or our brokers, but to enable them. So when our broker is on a call with Dharm, and Dharm tells them, I'm looking for a house that has these characteristics, which all the portals allow you to filter. But I also want it to have a shopping mall as 5-minute drive, a vet, a family doctor, and a British school, and a nursery for my 2-year-old child within 5, 10, 15 minutes. No broker can give you this without spending hours looking for that property and trying to triangulate locations and so on. Today, with that bar that we launched a few months ago within our teams in the UAE, our agents are able to do that. And that's exactly how we plan on using artificial intelligence, at least for the short and midterm, to enable our customers not to disrupt them.
Wow.
I expect, to be honest, Dharm, I expect to see this on all portals very soon. I would be very surprised if not all portals.
I agree with you, because already the threat to the portals is ChatGPT.
I'm surprised we haven't seen it yet. I would be shocked if we don't see this very soon across portals, across markets.
My perspective on that is that because like a Rightmove Zoopla is based on old technology, that's the issue. And for them to migrate, it's almost like a bank saying, I'm going to move my accounting core platform across. And they're like, whoa, hold on a sec, but all these other things are linked to it, right? It's a big task. So I think only new players can bring it to market, I think, is the view. But I don't know.
There's a big question mark because of the following. So you are right that the vast majority of portals, not all, I have to say, we have been seeing some prevalent players coming into markets and stealing significant market shares, especially in the Middle East, because there's one, spending a lot of money, which is obviously needed to be able to grab market share from classified businesses, but two, giving really, let's say, improved journeys through the portal, grab market share. Having said this, it is true that portals over the last 1 or 2 decades have gotten relatively comfortable in really improving their technology, because it's very hard to disrupt them unless you really have a bank backing you willing to burn hundreds of millions of dollars to disrupt the portal. Having said this, I do not have the capability to get into the nitty-gritty of whether their old systems, or let's say their old, relatively old technology, can support these, for example, natural search language models or natural language search model. But again, I would be very surprised if you don't see this across portals very, very quickly.
I agree with you because I think they will have to very quick. I mean, you're already sort of seeing some interesting use cases for Gen AI. So, on Zoopla, you can reimagine your house already.
Renders and so on.
Yeah, I
Correct.
think is really nice, really good added value. So I agree with you. What I think is really interesting about what you've done, and the reason, I was really keen to talk to you again and understand where you're at on your journey. And I'm really looking forward to talking to you again as well. Despite everything, all you've done is you've focused on a problem. I really love that you really kind of focused on something that, we all know is a problem, but rather than sort of sitting there and going, it's a problem, let's not bother doing anything, you've seen the opportunity. And, that's the thing that leads and guides you in terms of all of this. And I think such a powerful story. And I'm so delighted that things seem to be going well for you, because I think you're an exemplar for what the approach that should be taken. I do love the fact that you're just trying to make people's lives better.
That's truly it at the core. I spend a lot of my time traveling between the different cities that we're launching and speaking truly to hundreds of real estate agents. One of the best feelings you can get is when a real estate agent comes to you and tells you, thank you for finally building what all of us dreamed of. And actually, it's funny, in a lot of our sales pitches, because I spend a lot of time pitching agents, the first reaction is, this is too good to be true. This is truly like one of our big issues is like, how can I have this person who has been mistreated throughout his professional career as a real estate agent believe that I'm truly going to deliver on my promises? Of course, when you're launching the first city in the country, it's significantly more difficult than when you're launching the 6th and 7th, right? Because they have a track record, they can speak to your existing customer base, they can get on a call and speak to a real estate agent in Madrid who did this change that we're asking them to do. But first of all, thanks for your kind words. To be very honest, Dave, this did not come easy. This came from a huge amount of mistakes that we did. Like if I was to credit this, I would say it's 3 things, right? First, a lot of trial and error and an incredible amount of blood, sweat, and tears from our teams across markets. 2, being very comfortable to know when we have something working and when we have to raise our hand and say, hey, this is not working, guys. We need to make a severe change, which we did 2 years ago to reach this operating model, especially on real estate. And last but not least, as you know, this is my first tech startup, right? I don't come from a tech background whatsoever. And one of the first things I learned from Ziad, who's our CEO, co-founder, and also my best friend, is that in tech, you have to be disgustingly focused and you have to be ruthless on that focus. We can be building 10 things, 10 different verticals. Everything else that we do that's not focused is an opportunity cost on our minds, on our bandwidth, and our financial resources. So from day 0, it was very clear that you have to be very obsessed with your customer and with the problem that you're trying to solve for this customer. We could be building truly 100 things. And a lot of proptechs are building, I'm going to do rent now, pay later, and I'm going to do renovations, and I'm going to do mortgages, and I'm going to do fractional ownership, and I'm going to do short-term and mid-term rentals, and I'm going to do sales. The only 2 things we do at Huspy, we help home buyers and home sellers obtain the best service when they're trying to get their mortgage and the best service when they're trying to buy and sell their house. Once we are comfortable to say we have incredible technology, incredible operations, incredible marketing, incredible everything, only then can we say, okay, we can work on something else in parallel. Otherwise, you get spread too thin. All your resources get spread too thin, and you don't end up solving anything with excellence. And I always say, if it's not excellent, it doesn't belong at us.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, Dharmesh, have you got any last questions before we finish?
Yeah, one last question, very quick. When are you coming to the UK?
One of my closest friends lives there, and I've been promising him to do that for a very, very long time. The reality is we spend a lot of time, Ziad and I, traveling for work. I think on a personal level, I'll be visiting the UK in the next trimester, and I'd love to meet you both in person because we haven't managed to cross actually the UAE, like with Dave being there recently, with me not being there. And the UK will not be one of our next 3 markets that we launch, that's for sure. We already have a roadmap for 2026 to double the number of cities in which we're operating in Spain and launch 1 to 2 additional markets. To give you a bit of a hint, they're closer to the Mediterranean than the North Sea.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, look, I mean, it's been deeply fascinating, and I'm not just jealous, I'm just very excited for seeing startups that scale like yourself. And I truly do hope you can come to the UK and launch the service here at some point soon. But
on behalf of everyone at Huspy, thank you very much for always being supporters, for giving us a voice. And hopefully you keep having these as we keep growing and hitting new milestones of success as an organization.
Absolute pleasure to have you. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to Dave and Dharm Demystify. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe and tune in next time as we take another topic and demystify it.